Welcome everyone. I'm so delighted to host this session of hLife dialogue. So today we're very fortunate to have Eric Rubin from and also Rui Ping Xiao from New England Journal of Medicine to talk about uh, a variety of topics from medicine to medical journals and about also to the roles editors have to do with these matters. So first, before we start, let me just briefly introduce our guest, Professor Eric Rubin. He's the editor-in-chief for the New England Journal of Medicine since 2019, just before the COVID. Before joining New England, Eric was a named professor at Harvard Public Health, and we have a lot of common friends over there. And also, he chaired the Department of Immunology and Infectious Diseases. And he has served on many journals from PLOS Pathogens. Many of you have published, including me. Tuberculosis and MBio, and also has been a scientific advisor on clinical research projects for a variety of diseases, including COVID and TB. He's a leading figure in the international TB basic research field and with extensive influence in areas such as tuberculosis, microbacterial genetics, TB host pathogen interaction, and the development of TB vaccines and therapeutics. So then Rui Ping, close friend of mine, is from Beijing. She's the dean of the College of Future Technology at Peking U, and also Peking U chair professor. She was trained as a physician in Wuhan, my hometown. Then she went to US for training and then came back. Currently, Rui Ping serves as a council member for the council member of the International Society of Heart Research and also associate editor for New England Journal of Medicine, and also on the editorial board for multiple international journals. So today is the birthday for hLife. So of course a new beginning for many of us sitting here. So, but New England Journal of Medicine has a long history, and obviously is one of the most successful medical journals all of any journals on this planet. So let me first ask Eric, what do you think is behind the success of New England Journal of Medicine? What was the original fundamental consideration to launch this journal that has made the journal so successful over the years?
Well, first again, thanks for having me. It's interesting if you look back at the history of the journal. It started more than 200 years ago, and it was published as essentially a newsletter by a local physician who incidentally also was one of the founders of Mass General Hospital. He was a busy guy. And Harvard Medical.
Just like you and me.
But if you go back and read the original issues, and some of them are sitting in my office, so you just grab them off the wall, they're bad. I mean, they would never pass for medical research now. They're really case reports or one physician's observations. And that probably represented a lot of what was going on in medical research, particularly in the early days of the United States, because the founding was not that long after the United States started. When the United States was basically it had been a colony, and the major research that was going on in Europe. And so the journal published what people had heard about when they were in Europe. That was considered an article back in those days. I think that the big change was really the onset of randomized controlled trials. And I think the journal was an early adopter of the idea that these trials were rigorous. And that, more than anything, is probably what elevated it to the position that it's in right now. Because as researchers adopted the idea that RCTs were the way that you provided real evidence, the journal was already well positioned to look at RCTs.
Okay, thank you. And but of course, over the years, medicine has changed a lot, and so are the medical journals. But many are emerging, and many become, I wouldn't say obsolete, but not in fashion. Yeah, yeah. So we have to speak more closely to the microphone. So what do you think are the new waves of technology or changes you envision or you are preparing for in your journal?
I guess I'd answer that in two ways. The first is whether or not the sort of bedrock of what we published, the randomized controlled trial, is really the way that medical research is going to be done in the future. It is the gold standard right now, but it's really hard to do. You're doing these big trials can cost hundreds of millions of dollars, and they only answer one question. At the end, you can say, yes, the hypothesis is true, or no, it wasn't. And that's not a very efficient way of learning. So I think that as people innovate around RCTs, we're going to see more trial designs, adaptive trial designs and such, that are just going to be more scalable to the world. But in the question of technology, that also has changed so tremendously. And you remember in training, you would carry around a little book that had all the formulas you needed to calculate renal function, and that had the list of all the doses for any drug. And now no one, of course, does that. They have their phone in their pocket and they can look up anything. And now when I see a patient, I look up everything because I think I know it, but but it's so easy to look up that I should look at, has something changed in the last year that I should know about that I can apply to this patient? That's really going to change even more dramatically with the onset of AI. I don't think there's any question that in a very short time, within the next year or two, we're going to see doctors saying, I've got this case, explaining a difficult case, and really getting help from these AI assistants. And it's really going to change medical practice. So I think we as journals also need to be there. How are we going to do that? I don't know all the answers. We are starting an AI journal that will launch next month. In fact, the first articles are online. Came online this past week. I mean that's one response. But how many people sit down and read a paper journal? Not so many. And I think that we are going to have to try to keep up with where our readers are. I don't know, Ping, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, we need to ask Ping for some, because Ping is an unusual case. She was a physician in China, then went to US, and then came back, and now she's directing this future technology school. So she has a very broad knowledge. And so what do you think is in the future for medicine?
Thank you, Professor Dong. It's a great honor to be here. Talking about the future, I serve as the founding dean for the College of Future Technology. in my opinion, this kind of perspective really is exciting, but at the same time make me nervous. What is future technology? I think the mainstream, like Dr. Eric Rubin just summarized, AI. AI definitely leading this future technology. There are many different categories. The application of AI in medicine, not only for clinical trial, for drug design, for big data sharing, for public health management, and for policy making. I think all related to life science and medicine. Not particularly, we are very much focused on clinical trials. So our new journal, maybe in the beginning, will focus on this aspect for the design, for the data analysis, particularly for patient recruitment. That's usually is a difficult part and very time consuming. It's expensive. With AI, we could have a bigger pool for patients and a better decision we can make.
Can I turn the question around to you? Because you started a new journal today.
Yeah.
Are people going to be reading journals? It's a difficult question on the day that your new journal is launching, and it's so exciting. But what's going to happen in the 5 to 10 years?
Okay. I hope people will read our journal. But right now I have to acknowledge, I agree that there are too many journals and we don't have enough time to read all the journals. But I'm still doing my best to follow certain journals. I would think many physicians are still following your journal, and as a way to watch the changes in the world, in the field. But over the years, in next 5 years, I think with AI and also big data and other things, there will be explosion of information. So how are we going to handle all this information? Some may be true, some may be not so true, some may be even false. So how are we going to handle all this information? So I think AI will play big parts because in the old days, before 90, when I came to the United States for my graduate study, not many people use computers, and now not only use computer but also use pad and cell phone to get all the information to help you to work. So I think that will be quite in 5 years I can envision, but although I don't know in detail, so what our life will be, our as scholars, as scientists. So sometimes during the COVID, I was thinking maybe in the future my lab will be staffed with robots. They don't need to rest. They follow rules more stringently, and also they probably are equipped with all the journals I want them to read.
I hope none of your graduate students are here right now.
No, maybe they are online. But people are also talking that the radiologists and the pathologists are going to be out of job. What do you think? But if you are submitted with a paper with pathology or radiology pictures in them, are you going to ask AI to evaluate them, or is your editorial board members going to be reduced because of AI, or change because of AI?
Well, we're also hoping our editorial board is replaced by robots. I do think that in general, AI is a threat in ways to people's jobs, and and that does concern me. I think the best way of thinking about AI in medicine right now is as an adjunct, as something that can make everything better. And maybe, at least for now, it can make physicians' lives better, because instead of doing all this paperwork, documentation, instead of scheduling appointments and things like that, it'll all get done for you. And that, I think, is going to be the first place where AI makes a difference. In places with low resources, and George out there has worked, a global health expert, works in places where there aren't physicians. And I think that AI is going to some extent, replace some of the roles that a physician would have here in China or in the U.S. And that's going to be a big boon in those places. In the long term, though, it'll be interesting to see where it goes. I like all of us, I'm both excited and I worry.
Ping, what do you think?
I'd like to add a few points. Yeah, I just started to emphasize how important AI in
Closer to your mouth.
in every aspect in our practice. Not only AI, a lot of future technology like imaging, that's also going to revolutionize our diagnosis, even treatment. So the new material, the application of new material in our body, that's another future technology. So, but they're all in the context of image information. That definitely need AI to integrate them. Dr. Eric Rubin just emphasized that for the remote area, the kind of global harmonization. Within China, we also have a big imbalance. Now, many remote area, they don't have good physicians. They don't have a good healthcare system. I think AI will revolutionize that kind of policy and healthcare.
I want to be careful, because I think, Ping, you just brought up a really good point. We're focusing on AI, which is the future, maybe the near future and the far future, both. But there's also the present, that the influence of technology. We published many years ago that screening for lung cancer using CT scans saved lives. It could detect early lung cancer in people at high risk. In the U.S. today, many years later, almost no one gets screened. In China, there's a technology revolution, what's essentially a technology revolution, which has reduced the price of CT, so it's $30. And now you can really think about doing it, whereas in the U.S., it's crazy expensive to do that kind of screening, even though it could save lives. So technology is not just about the super high tech. It's also it's also in health policy. How do you make things accessible that weren't accessible before?
Do you publish articles related to health policies in your journal?
We do.
We hope to publish those kind of articles in our journal too.
Well, actually, let me say a word about your journal, because it was really fun to page through it this afternoon. The good thing about being an old established journal like ours is that everyone knows who we are, and we have a very good relationship with authors, and people come to us, and that is what you called us a great journal, but we're a great journal because of our great authors. But it also means we don't have that much flexibility. We are of a tradition. People expect us to do certain things, and to a great extent, we're limited in what we can do. The exciting thing about a new journal is you don't have those constraints. And just looking through, you're publishing things with different formats, with very different approaches. So you have much more of a chance to experiment than
we are a baby. You are grandma. You're away.
yeah, but I don't look my age.
No, your journal, I meant. I don't mean Pin either.
Oh, she does not look like
Yeah,
grandma.
she's quite young. Yeah, she's my younger sister.
Oh,
Yeah. So let's also touch on doctors, medical doctors, because I'm also not only the founding editor-in-chief for this journal, I'm also founding dean for a new medical school at Westlake University. So because we're still a baby also. So we're discussing what future doctors should learn or should be equipped with. What do you think? Because in the past, in the old days, when your journal was launched, doctors see patients one by one. But as you said, now academic doctors do RCT. So then it's a totally new game for that. So they have to learn biostat, epidemiology, and all these things. But in looking into future, probably they need to learn less about pathology because AI will do about them, but they need to learn more AI technology. How do you work with AI?
It's such a changing time, and it's such an interesting time to found a new medical school. Congratulations. I mean, it's a great place too because of the great basic science at Westlake. So it's a real opportunity. When I was in medical school, probably no different from you, Ping. We had classes from 9 in the morning till 5 at night every day, and lecture classes. And we learned all the drugs and their indications and their contraindications and their adverse events and their molecular structure and their pharmacology. And all of that stuff is worthless now. I mean, it's nice. It's important to know that the drug exists. It's vital to know it exists. But you can look up all of that stuff. But there's no reason to memorize it. You don't need to memorize all that, everything. That being said, and so now we should be teaching much more about how you learn going forward rather than what you need to memorize. And that includes the methodologies that you're talking about, the biostatistics, epidemiology, and clinical trials. How do you understand a clinical trial? How can you read a journal that has, like ours, which has clinical trials, to understand the evidence base for something? Now, that being said, there's a very big experiential part of medicine. You have to spend a lot of time with patients. And you learn things that are not so quantifiable with that. You learn to tell the difference between someone who's not so sick and really in danger.
But there are tools like simulation.
And that may be the way to learn. Yeah, you still have to do it. And I'm not sure you have to be with a real patient to do it, but you have to do it. And you have to spend a significant amount of time at that. But personally, I'd rather see doctors in training with patients or with simulators or something in a clinical situation than in the classroom.
Ping, what do you think? Because you were trained in China, the very traditional medical school, and now you are dealing with a grandma journal.
I still try to be young, from inside out. Yeah. What kind of criteria is required for a good physician, a good doctor? I think Dr. Rubin is right. You don't need to know remember all those pharmacology, anatomy, all those things. AI can help you. But one or two things AI cannot. Number one, experience. That's a lot of intuition. Depend on how quick you can save life. That's very important in practice. Secondly, I think second aspect is humanity. I always emphasize that. Machine is a machine. It's cold without any temperature. As a good physician, you really care about the patients, patient-centered. You show your sympathy, compassion. That's make a huge difference. I think that's really is a physician's
What do you think are the major differences between Chinese doctors and American doctors?
big difference.
Based on the submissions you handle.
Well,
Well, the submissions I handle, well, I will say that we get a lot of submissions from China. It's our second most submissions in
Yeah,
from
yeah,
China.
because Ping is a good salesperson.
She is, and those submissions have increased since Ping joined the journal, which proves your point.
thank you for giving me so much credit.
Yeah.
Yeah, China really clinical research is rising rapidly, and we try to catch up in every aspect. Compare U.S. and China, our training is different. Our basic education is also different. So our physicians really have very heavy burden. They only have limited time with patients. On average, less than 10 minutes. But in US, that's definitely totally different world. Patient has plenty of time to really communicate with physicians. Used to.
Now they are talking with machines.
No, now they're talking with insurance companies. I mean, I think you're absolutely right, and the burden on Chinese. We've been visiting Chinese hospitals, and the work, the number of patients is incredible that they have to deal with.
Especially in major cities.
Especially
major
so, yeah.
hospitals.
We were in Shanghai. Was it 2 days ago? And one of the we were in a conference, and one of the physicians who had just presented said that he had to leave because he had 60 patients in his clinic, and that was at 4:30 in the afternoon. And that we don't have, although the administrative burden on doctors has risen dramatically in the U.S., and you can't just sit with patients anymore, which is a big drawback.
Yes, that's true. And also more fundamentally, the system is different.
Yeah.
Who's going to pay?
Yeah.
For those kind of comfort, caring, and for the innovation.
Mm-hmm.
It's a double-edged sword. If you can see 60 patients and take care of them in a couple of hours, you're doing a great social good, and you're a darn good doctor to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But are you providing the very best care that a patient can? No, it's impossible, no matter how good you are.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And the other thing I wanted to talk with both of you is global health. Since you were at Harvard Public Health and you work in the TB area, and now since you took the editor-in-chief position, we had a COVID and sort of deglobalization in a way. But what do you think about these public health issues? Will we see more pandemic coming? And do you think because people tend to ignore the public health issues or pandemic or infectious diseases
It's such a complicated question, and there are so many parts to that. As an infectious disease doctor, what have we always worried about? We've always worried about. I think that there have been some benefits to the COVID outbreak in terms of the public health surveillance and the public health response. I also think that there has been a lot of damage in that the disease has become very politicized in many countries, particularly my own. And that's crazy. It's just a disease, and facts are facts. But it's made it more difficult to deal with, and more difficult to do some of the epidemic surveillance that we should be doing. And it'll be more difficult to make a response because people now think that vaccination is dangerous and bad in many parts of the world. So it's been both enabling and crippling to have the outbreak that we've just had, and I really do worry about the next outbreak. It is inevitable. That's how disease works, and in this globalized world, we're going to get spread from somewhere of something. Let me give an example. Ebola. Ebola has, broken out in countries where it had never been, and it's been disastrous. It's gone into big cities, and yet still we're talking about thousands of deaths and not millions of deaths. But if we had seen, if at one point Ebola appeared in Nigeria is a huge country, a very densely populated in Lagos, a very densely populated city. Had there been substantial spread, we wouldn't have been able to. We didn't have the means to control it. Mm-hmm. Now the bad part is, can that happen again? Yes, and almost inevitably will happen that we have more Ebola outbreaks, and there is one going on right now, and there's a Marburg virus outbreak going on right now. Yeah.
But do we have a vaccine?
But we have a vaccine for Ebola. Yeah. Now we need a Marburg, but we need to really have these filoviruses, these other. We need to do that kind of work in advance, and that means someone has to pay for it. That means that there have to be grants to work on rather obscure diseases that haven't affected humans yet. It means that we have to have the development up through animal studies before we see these because it takes so long. And it means that journals like us have to publish that work, even though it's on something that looks obscure.
Yeah. What about TB? Do you worry about TB?
No.
Being a TB expert.
Well, the more TB there is, of course, the better it is for me. But no, TB doesn't fit so well into the epidemic paradigm. It moves very slowly. And the disease takes a long time, and the vast majority of people infected don't get sick. So it's quite different from the.
So it's like a way like coronavirus.
It is, although only about 5% of people who get infected with TB get sick. So it's actually a tiny fraction. And so our ability to resist TB as a disease is really quite good. Even though we don't have a good ability to resist infection, once we get infected, it doesn't really matter for most people. So controlling it has a different set of challenges. But it is really depressing right now to think that we have very effective treatments. We don't have a very effective vaccine, but we have very effective, maybe we will have one, we're hopeful. But we have very effective treatments. We even have very effective treatments for multi-drug resistant TB now. And so the vast majority of cases are curable. And yet, the 1.4 million-ish, sort of made up number of people have died last year. So I find that statistic depressing. I work on developing new treatments for TB, and it would be great to have better treatments. It would be great to have a treatment that took 1 week instead of 6 months. But it would be great if we could take the treatment we have now and use it, and because so many people are not getting that treatment and getting cured when they should be.
Let's talk a little bit about rare disease. Maybe Ping, you can comment on that, because Eric just mentioned that RCT and clinical trials are the areas the journal is interested in. But what about rare disease? How you treat topics like a rare disease?
That's really a good topic. Rare disease in China is not rare. Why I say that? Such a population, even a rare disease attacked millions of patients. So actually, for research, for basic researcher like myself and you, rare disease is a kind of experiments made by God. The mutation is happened in our human body, show us what's the biology, the principle. So from that kind of research, we can find drug target. Usually, one real disease sometimes can open the door for a big common disease like non-communicable disease. For example, PCSK9. That's an excellent example. When in the beginning, it happened as a rare disease, it's a kind of point mutation for the lipid metabolism. So in the family, that kind of information motivate the research to figure out the whole pathway, then become a very nice drug target. Now it's a very successful, a lot of medicines are already available. So rare disease is kind of opportunity for us to look carefully what's the new target, what's the new biomarker, what's related system for physiology and pathology. I think we should be more careful. Don't just think about it. It's so rare. Only a few patients. That's not true. Usually give us an opportunity to open the door.
Would you ask the authors to give you more cases or certain numbers?
Well, I think we always say we want to change practice, right? If you think about change practice, you want to benefit the most people, not only a few people or the rich people.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Ping. There's no one generic answer, but I love the example of PCSK9. So why do we have all these therapies for PCSK9 right now? We have antibodies, and antibodies were developed. The use of monoclonal antibodies in humans were developed with not incredibly common diseases, but rheumatologic diseases and such, is where we first saw them. But there's also an RNAi for treating PCSK9, and there's and most recently gene therapy for treating PCSK9. And where did those come from? Those came from rare diseases. The technologies all came from rare diseases, even though what they're being applied to are not necessarily rare diseases anymore. As for what the standards are for publishing on rare diseases, Ping has it just right. We publish single case reports of things, sometimes, where there's and usually there's a new biological principle, there's some unexpected dramatic effect. We don't publish that many of them. So how many cases of spinal muscular atrophy do you need in order to tell whether or not something worked? And there's no simple answer to that. One dramatic response is probably enough. But what if you have a middling response? Then you need a little bit more evidence. And so it's really just a question of getting back to what Ping said. What would change practice if you have a patient with spinal muscular atrophy? I'm picking one arbitrary example where a disease where we have published. And if you want to make those people's lives better, is 3 people who had a small response good enough? And I think we make that value judgment all the time.
I think now we open the dialogue to the audience. If there's anyone who wish to ask Ping and Eric, or maybe myself, any question, or what do you want to? Yes, that's.
That we can do for the next 5 years, what will you focus on, like related to a disease?
That's a very good question. And I'm going to answer it with nonfiction and then fiction.
Cool. I like that.
So the nonfiction is, what do I know and what am I good at? And what I know is TB, and what I'm reasonably good at is basic microbiology and the basic physiology of the organism. So I think my 5-year plan is to leverage what I know and leverage it in a way that's going to have a benefit. The benefit for me is the easiest way to get there is to make a drug, to inhibit the processes that I'm understanding, or alter those processes in a way that the bug doesn't work anymore, the bug dies. So that's a very practical answer. I would say that what I'm saying is, but I would point out that my answer is not a question. It's not I want to understand the biology of this. For me, it's a very translational question. How can I take what I know to apply to human disease? The fictional answer is, when I'm falling asleep at night and I'm fantasizing about things, what would I like to do? There are all kinds of crazy experiments that I'd love to do, and they come up all the time.
Launching a new journal?
Like launching a new journal. But that falls into that category. And when I wake up, I say, nah, I'm not going to do that. But it is, one of the fun things about science is there's so much you can do. It's really exciting. And that fantasizing is fun. And occasionally it leads to something real. So,
you still have your dream.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a good question. I often ask myself same question. I always have a dream to make something can save life. So currently, I have 2 global trials. One is for women health, endometriosis. That's a very painful disease. No good medicine yet. All those available ones, standard of care, has a very severe side effects. So I hope I can really finish that first in class. So far, so good. Very exciting. But my heightened dream is acute myocardial infarction. The death rate still very high in China, particularly in China. It's the #1 killer, cardiovascular disease. So in my lab, we have cooking for 20 years. Now we have something maybe next year can be in the IND stage.
I should say, since I'm sitting next to Ping, that a lot of those fantasies I have involve regrowing hair on my head.
That's in the dermatology section. Regenerative dermatology. Do we have other? Yeah.
Somebody maybe like to try.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you. I have a very simple question. A lot of journals are talking about parallel or multiple submission at this point, because now the internet has developed to a certain extent where journals actually communicate with each other. So do you think that multiple submission will be happening in major medical journals? Thank you.
So, we talk to all the editors of other journals, and we really don't like them. No, it's hard for me to say this as coming from New England Journal of Medicine, but the truth is that when you submit to many journals, you're already doing parallel submission, because journals with large journal families will consider your article for their other family journals, and that has become changed from an exception to the rule. We do the same. We do have a sister journal, NEJM Evidence. We also have now NEJM AI. When we see a submission that we think is really interesting and we can't take, not only do we refer it to our sister journal, but they're in the room. They're sitting right there, and they say, "Well, we take that one." So I think that it would be. I think that we should get to the point where if you submit a manuscript and the work is good, that someone is going to want to take it, and that someone, maybe not just within a journal family, but that someone is going to be able to identify it early, so you don't go through the process of serially submitting it over and over and over again. And I know what a pain it is to submit it. It's
So it's more like a buyer's market or seller's market, right? Right now, many papers come your way, and then you select the ones you are interested in. And but in the future, can we post our paper online, and then any journal can approach us, and we want to publish your paper?
Yeah, and that is true in bioRxiv to some extent. And I mean, anyone who has posted on bioRxiv gets emails from journals saying, "We're interested in your paper." Now, for the most part, they're journals you wouldn't want to publish in, but I think we will get to that point. It's just when you think about the mechanics of it, without using AI yet, it's really difficult. There are thousands of articles appearing on bioRxiv every day, and you can't read them. It's just impossible for anyone to do it. But could an AI go out and look at them and say, "This is something you might be interested in"? That's an interesting idea. Now, the other idea, and actually this is a question for you, is should we share our reviews, even outside of journal families? The reviewers have invested a lot of effort in those, and if we got a paper that had reviews, if we or the authors sent the reviews to you, would you use them?
I would, because we talk about green channel, so-called green channel or fast channel. Then you can transfer the reviews even less formally to us, and we'll consider then our editors will consider these comments. But the problem is, if as an author, if I take a position as an author, if the comments were friendly, then why don't you want to go back to the same journal by addressing those comments? So you must have a reason to transfer your paper to another journal. So quite frequently, we don't transfer to another journal. Even in the same publishing house, we submit it as a new, hope we get a much more friendly reviewers than the original one. Okay, we're almost coming to an end. Let me end by asking you both to comment on what you have done for the New England Journal of Medicine. You wish to be known as or to be remembered as.
Well, almost 10 years since I have been started this associate editor position. It's such a rewarding journey. I basically serve as an ambassador, a bridge to collect China with the journal, with the rest of the medical community. So I really view myself as an educator more than an editor. I delivered more than 100 sessions of kind of training, just introduce some basic concepts of clinical research, some principles of designs. Not very sophisticated, but it's very necessary, basic knowledge for our physicians. So that's why I think it's so rewarding. May sacrifice a few high-profile papers. That's true. Just a trade, that's a give and take. So I want to thank Dr. Rubin, gave me this opportunity to do the service.
Well, the pleasure is ours, Ping, for sure. So I'm not sure that I'm looking to be remembered for anything. I already feel so lucky. I hope I don't offend anyone by saying this is the best job in all of medicine. Ping nailed it. It is so interesting. We have a weekly, actually twice a week, we have meetings of the editors going through manuscripts, and each one is like a journal club. The manuscripts, the editor who handles the manuscript will hand around copies of all the figures, and then starts telling you why did they do the study, what's the background, why is this important, goes through all the data and the kinds of analyses, goes through what the reviewers think, and then offers some opinion as this is really exciting, we really need to be here, or this isn't, I don't think we really want this because of X or Y, or I'm not sure what to do. And then there's this incredible discussion. So every week we're hearing the very best research in all of medicine. Even the stuff we reject is great if it's made it that far from an expert in the field. So very fulfilling. And then the responsibility, which I think Ping has also communicated, that we all feel to do the best we can to shape a message that's correct, because we're all aware that it's going to affect the patient. It's almost like doing medicine without having the patient in front of you. You know that a doctor is going to do this because we published it, and that's a huge responsibility, and we're very, very sensitive to that. As for what I'd like to see the journal do going forward, it has to do with some of your questions before. We need to think about how we're going to communicate in a way that's effective in this new world, in a world where not everyone is going to read a journal article from start to finish. I think we still have the best material that's out there, the most important material that's out there. So how do we tell our story in a way that it will actually reach people?
Okay, thank you both for sharing a lot of your thoughts on almost everything. It's really a delight to be your host, and I enjoy talking with both of you, and I think the audience too. And good luck to the grandma.
and good luck to the baby.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.